Be the envy of the neighborhood. 860 KKAT, where the grass is always greener. Welcome to Gardening Utah. Here's composter and show hoster, Jana Francis.
Welcome to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis. Every week here on Gardening Utah, we give you gardening inspiration and advice from experts across the state. We talk about all things vegetables, flowers, trees, shrubs, and of course, your lawn. Thanks so much for listening. We really hope that this show is something that you look forward to listening to every week. Episodes drop every weekend on Apple Podcasts to get you ready for working in the yard on the weekend, and we air on 8:60 a.m. here in Utah on Saturday and Sunday at 10 a.m. Well, I'm so excited about this week's show. I know that you probably heard last week's show with Cameron Allcott from progressiveplants.com. We talked a lot about the pros and cons of branded plants. And this week, we actually have one of those companies here on our show. We have proven winners on the show today. I'm so excited. Now, what is proven winners? You've probably seen them in your local garden center or your nursery. You will be able to tell a proven winner plant because the pot is white and it says proven winners on the outside. So that's what we mean by branded plants. And this week we have proven winners. They're going to give us the scoop on some really cool varieties that you can buy from them, as well as we're getting a sneak peek on 2021. Yes, she is going to be telling us 3 plants that are going to be released for 2021 that you can't get now, but that you will be able to next year. And she tells us all about the varieties, and I'm super excited about them. I cannot wait. That is later on in the show today. And she flew all the way from Grand Rapids, Michigan to visit Progressive Plants. I know last week you probably heard us talking about the classes that you can go to at Progressive Plants that are outside, socially distanced. And she came from Grand Rapids, Michigan to walk a lot of the customers through all the beautiful proven winners varieties there and to help them pick the perfect plants for their particular yard. So in today's show, we're going to talk about proven winners plants, what to look for, what they have coming up, and she's going to tell us a lot about how they create these improved varieties and how long it takes. You will be really surprised at the love and care and the testing that goes into creating branded plants. I will never look at it the same again, and I don't think you will either. So this is a really interesting educational episode with Cameron being my co-host today, because this is the first time we will have 2 guests on the show, 3 of us talking all at once. So I'm excited about that. And we'll get into that in a minute. But first, you know what time it is. The tip of the week.
860 KKAT with your Gardening Utah tip of the week.
My tip of the week is get on out there and deadhead those plants so that they'll keep on blooming. So let's face it, deadheading does sound a little bit scary. But listen, it's not as scary as it sounds. It just means getting out there and trimming off those spent flowers. Not only does it keep your garden looking nice and neat, but it also encourages those plants to continue to make new blooms through the rest of the summer and into the fall. And it really just helps the flowers focus on making flower buds instead of spending a lot of energy on producing seeds. Now, some gardeners get really nervous about snipping off parts of their plants, but unless you really whack away too much, it's really tough to damage or kill your plant just by deadheading. So have a look at the plant. If the flowering plant has blooms that are fading, they're turning brown and they're curling up, or they just don't look very good, that is your cue to pull out those garden scissors and get trimming the spent blooms away. So which ones do you deadhead? Well, you can often get a clue about which plants to deadhead and which to leave alone just by watching them. So if the flowers stay on the plant and then they suddenly become brown and unattractive, meaning they're probably going to seed, it's definitely time to deadhead. Now, some of the plants are really shrubby and they may have a lot of small flowers, maybe like Coreopsis. I know I have a garden full of feverfew right now. So really shrubby plants with teeny tiny flowers, maybe lobelia, maybe alyssum, some of the mums, asters. Trimming one flower at a time is impossible and it would take hours. So instead, it's okay to get out the grass shears and just give those a great big, just give them a big scissor right down the center of them. You can kind of see where the flower stalk goes into all of the leaves. And so avoid the buds, and don't forget, or don't worry about taking off a little bit of foliage with the blooms. It's okay, and it will grow back. And if you get it right at the right spot, you may get, from some of these plants, a really beautiful rebloom into the fall. So what about shrubby plants with really large flowers, like the great big marigolds or peonies? Those are mostly died back in this area. Salvia, petunias, and zinnias. Now, some petunias and some, let's say, impatiens are kind of self-cleaning is what they call them, where they're improved varieties that don't necessarily need to get hand pruned back anymore. But definitely some do. So with those, just get out the pruning snips and cut off each flower individually. Now, one of the things that I like to do, I'm kind of one of those frugal gardeners, and I really like to save the seed pods if they've already completely dried. So I'm just one of those frugal ones that's like, oh, I'll give these to a neighbor or a friend or my sister. So I really like to kind of just take out a little baggie with me, and if I know that that marigold seed head is, you know, dry enough and it has produced the proper seeds, or maybe it's zinnia, or maybe that feverfew, or the larkspur, a lot of the different things I'm cutting back in my garden right now. Ooh, hollyhocks as well. I've got a weekend full of hollyhock trimming to do, but I like to save those seed heads and just share them with a friend or neighbor. But again, don't be afraid if the seed head hasn't quite gone to seed yet. If you're not going to be giving that flower to anybody, just go ahead and cut it back, because you may have a chance of getting that plant to rebloom, later this year. Now, with roses, don't confuse roses with pruning, because deadheading roses is really only just taking out the bare minimum to tidy up the plant. So pruning and deadheading roses are two completely different things, and we do talk about that in different episodes as well. So what about really long stem flowers with tall stalks? Like I just talked a little bit about larkspur, maybe you've got daylilies or foxgloves. Just cut back each flower and just hand prune them, and shear them as close as possible to the spot where the stalk needs the leaves. Again, some plants don't need to be deadheaded at all. You can kind of tell just by looking at it. The more time you spend in your garden, the more practice you have, you can really get an idea of what you need to deadhead and what you don't. But really, what you want to do is make it look great and give that plant enough energy to continually give you new blossoms the rest of the year.
And that was the tip of the week.
Never miss a tip for your garden, and never miss an episode. The Gardening Utah Podcast with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT.
All right, everybody. Well, when we come back right after this break, we are going to have Monica Esh-Nauta from Proven Winners on the show. She came all the way from Grand Rapids, Michigan to visit Progressive Plants and do some gardening classes, and we were able to catch her and get her on the show. We're going to talk all about all of the testing and all the love and the care that goes into creating and improving new varieties of plants. And I'm really excited to talk to Monica from Proven Winners, and we will be getting to that right after this. Stay with us.
She's more than just gardening puns and sage advice. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT. Gardening Utah, available wherever you get your podcasts and at 860kkat.com/garden. Here's Jana Francis.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis. Thank you so much for listening. And I've been telling you guys we have a special episode today. And boy, was I right. I have got Cameron Allcott with Progressive Plants and Monica Esh-Nauta with Proven Winners with me in our studio. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining me today.
Yeah, it's fun to be here.
Thank you for having me.
You betcha. So this is the first time on Gardening Utah that we've actually had two guests at the same time. So this is pretty fun. And I'm really excited. Cameron's going to kind of be like my co-host today because he knows a lot about what we want to talk about today. So if you're just now listening to this episode as a listener and you haven't listened to last week's episode, you can go back on Apple Podcasts and listen after this, but it'll give you a little more context about what we are going to be talking about, because in last week's episode, Cameron and I talked a lot about the pros and cons of branded plants. And if you've already listened to it, you've heard that we've talked a lot about the Proven Winners brand, which we both are giant fans of. And once we realized that Monica was was going to be in town. By the way, she came all the way from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Once we realized she was going to be in town to do some lessons at Progressive Plants, she graciously agreed to be on the show. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
How was your travel here? Was it weird to be on a plane right now?
Honestly, because of the 6 feet apart, you actually got to not sit next to anybody, which is really nice. You didn't have to sit next to a sweaty stranger and not know his or her name. And so that was kind of nice. The airports are dead. It looks like there's still a pandemic going on, which is actually crazy to think about. Grand Rapids Airport is very, very tiny. So normally it takes 20-ish minutes to check in. It took me 5.
Wow.
So I was actually impressed that your Starbucks was open in the airport because ours was not.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Well, welcome to Utah. Is this the first time you've been here?
It is. I'm still here.
Well, hopefully you have a lovely time. It is a gorgeous state, and we're all lucky to be here. Okay, so by the time you as a listener will have heard this show, the classes with Monica will have ended, but you can go to progressiveplants.com and check out the classes that Cameron has coming up in the future. But we're going to kind of give you guys, since the classes are over, we're going to kind of give you the scoop on what they talked about in these classes and learn a lot more about what's coming up as far as maybe new varieties of anything with proven winners. So Cameron, where do you think we should start off?
I think where we should probably start off is I think a lot of people don't understand the plant selection process that Proven Winners goes through in order to bring something to market. And so, Monica, what I would probably ask is that can you kind of like walk us through how Spring Meadow actually comes into, or makes a decision of what they're going to bring to market for the color choice shrub program that you guys have?
Yeah, definitely. So when you think of Proven Winners as a whole, it's like a pie. And so you have your perennials, annuals, shrubs, trees, and etc. And so we are the shrub arm, so the home of all the shrubs, all the breeding, trialing, testing, obviously shipping, selling, marketing for that. So when you hear us, it's Spring Meadow, Color Choice, Flowering Shrubs, the winners. And so the Color Choice part actually is part of Spring Meadows, and we developed that, or they came up, Dale and Liz Deppie, who still own the company, still come in. They got their brand in 1999. And then in 2004, we actually partnered with Proven Winners. And from there, I mean, it's just been a great partner. We love everybody who is part of Proven Winners, annuals, perennials, and above. So when we look at trialing and testing in our place, we have 3, now I think we're going to have 5 acres of our R&D, so our research and development. We have tons of, I think we have about 40 acres of plus outside in the land, out in the stock fields. We bring in plants from breeders across the whole world. I think we just shipped in some stuff from Japan. The nice thing is we have our breeders and our growers all in the same place. And so I get to talk to a lot of our breeders on what's coming up, or if something's wrong, I get to talk to my customers and they say something's wrong, and I get to talk to them about that. But when we trial and test, and when we actually bring something into the market, we've been looking and testing it for 7 to 10 years. I mean, we are really taking time to make sure that the plants we give to our customers and for their customers, it is top-notch, number one, and it's performing in not just blooms, because obviously everybody likes something that's in flowering and blooms and production, but we want to have something that's hardy. We want to have something that is, the stems are strong. So if you think about an Annabelle hydrangea, they always flop over in the rain. We really have put on some hardy stems on a lot of our hydrangea, all of our hydrangeas, which is really nice. And then we look at foliage. How can we change the foliage, or how can we improve the foliage? How can we make it resistant for powdery mildew or, pesky bugs? If you think about Japanese beetle, how can we have something that's deer resistant or salt tolerant? We really want something that's going to perform at its best, and we want to make sure that it's perfect for our at the end, the retail customers. And the biggest thing that we're really focusing on right now is sizing down the shrubs. And so if you think of like your grandma's lilac, it is massive, big out there. And then for 2020, we just came out with our baby Kim, which she only stays in about 2.5-ish feet. So it's very, very small, but it still has massive blooms, fragrant. It brings in your pollinators, and it can be planted in a subdivision because it's so small.
Yeah, and so I'm actually really glad that you guys do that, because as a nursery owner myself, like our selection process is exactly what you had described. So that's really kind of cool that you do that, which is why I've been a big fan of the Proven Winners brand, because you guys are so you have so much emphasis on the performance of the plant and the landscape, and that is I think a huge advantage for like the Proven Winners brand. And why I was talking with Jana last week of how I think plant breeders like you and with the branding and whatnot that you guys do have developed some really good products for the landscapes nowadays. So that's awesome. Thank you for answering that for me.
Of course.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. I didn't realize it would be 7 to 10 years that you're testing those plants. And that, to me, adds a huge level of trust into, will this variety work for my area?
When I first came on board Spring Meadow, I was like, oh yeah, they try out some plants, that's cool. And then they're like, no. It's way more than that. In our research and development greenhouse, we went out there, and it's awesome to see, is you see tons of different varieties of, say, just a Hydrangea paniculata. And they're like, there's 40 of them and one will make the cut, maybe two. And so I don't ever want to have their job. That would be so hard to pick from those. And then they look at the blooms and I take them and cut them from there and then look at them again. And it's a very long process. And then we do send them around the United States to get trialed in different areas, because of course, Michigan is completely different than Utah. Cameron and I were just talking about that. And what we want to trialing in different areas. So of course, our area outside is kind of fenced off, so we can't really say that we trialed it against deer when deer can't get in. But we like to put it in the landscape. We like to not water it and see what happens. We like to overwater it and see what happens. We like to really it's a huge science experiment is the fun part for those plant geeks out there.
That is so interesting. To have that job would be so fascinating. I mean, how do you parcel that out? Like, okay, this section don't water, this section soak those babies.
Yeah, it's awesome to see, because they work in the exact same building with us. It's awesome to see them doing their job. I mean, they just hear us yap on the phone, but it's cool to see them bring something in. They're like, look at this. And you get to see the massive bloom on the plants, or especially this season when everything is in bloom, even in the greenhouses, even in the stock fields, just to see, the creation and the part of it. And I wish I knew more about, how they exactly bred things and stuff like that. I've just maybe take them on a date, put 2 plants.
Yeah, the science that you have to know for like a lot of like the development and breeding, it to me is just astounding. Like, I mean, I've talked to like some plant breeders before, and I can't even believe how much they know. Like, they've forgotten more than I think that I will ever know.
Wow. And so Cameron, you were mentioning you've been out there before. Tell us about it.
Oh man, that was a crazy experience. I think it was right after you guys had the fire up there and you ended up getting a new office. Is that right? That's what you were telling me, right?
Yes. So we had a fire, and so it burnt our office down completely. And so we had to, I wasn't there at the time. It burnt the entire office down to the ground, and we had to work in like basically the break room for where everybody, like the propagation team and everybody is at, just like huddled together. And so imagine being, especially in sales, like trying to talk on the phone and then, trying to shuffle around, and then winter time. So it was just slush and not fun. And luckily I came in when it was like the brand new building, and, the new office, the new bathrooms, the new kitchen. And so I just had to hear from the old guys, saying the PTSD of, do you remember when we had to do this in the office? So I just got to see pictures.
Yeah. So it's really cool because it's one of the most state-of-the-art nurseries that I've ever seen. So Jana, just kind of give you an idea, like they don't do a lot of handling of plants with actual hands. They are very mechanized over there. So if you, I can't remember if I put this on our YouTube channel or not, but I remember videoing some machines that they have where they would take cuttings and the machines would actually stick cuttings into trays for them. So they actually didn't have any hand labor actually sticking the cuttings. Like, so basically a computer would go recognize a plant, pick up the little stem with a little robotic arm and put it in a tray all automatically.
What?
It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then there's, then they get put on like little rail systems and they just kind of get like transported like all over the place into different areas where they get loaded up and moved into, their greenhouses to, continue rooting out under misting machines that are all automated. I mean, it was a pretty incredible thing. Like I was jealous. I was really jealous.
Yeah, the cutting machine that Cameron is talking about, so they can stick 1,200 cuttings in an hour.
Oh.
So it's an arm, and you have to program it for each plant, or some plants are a lot alike, so you don't have to keep programming it, but it takes a photo, finds it, and sticks it, and it's phenomenal technology.
That sounds like a really cool Instagram post. You've probably done that before, but
it is. I've got the video. Actually, I think Spring Meadow has it on their YouTube channel too. I think you can actually link it directly to there where you can see it at work.
I'll have to put that in the episode notes, Gardening Utah listeners. So when we come back right after this break, we're going to have more with Monica Esh-Nauta from Proven Winners and Cameron Allcott from Progressive Plants. Stay with us.
860 KKAT with Jana Francis and Gardening Utah, where it's always mulch time. She really does have the nicest yard on the block. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and with me in studio today is Monica Esh-Nauta with Proven Winners and Cameron, as you all know, from Progressive Plants. Thanks again for being here, you guys. This is super fun.
Yes, it is.
So
Thank you.
On the break, we were talking roses, and Cameron and I have talked before on the show about the At-Last rose, and I didn't put two and two together that I was a proven winner. So talk to us about that beautiful, beautiful rose.
So with At-Last, it is our first fragrant rose. And so when I mean fragrant is, to me, when I smell it, it smells like a creamsicle. And it's so fragrant. We have a whole hedge planted in front of our nursery right when we walk in, and you can smell it walking in. I have one planted outside in my garden, and I have coffee next to it when it's in bloom, and I can sit there and smell it. It is phenomenal. With that, it's the orangey little look to it. It's nice and lush, and it's the rebloomer, and it blooms and blooms and blooms, and it's just great for something in that industry of roses that you'd like to see. It's easy to prune. It's fragrant, it's reblooming, it's the low maintenance, which a lot of people are looking for.
And it's not a hybrid tea, right? We're talking like a Floribunda, right?
Good question.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets kind of hard to classify that rose. I mean, it's like Floribunda is a grandifloras. I mean, if you talk to like a rose breeder, like they don't even know what the difference is.
I guess
so
the only way I classify it is like a hybrid tea would be sort of like one that you've, just the one that you'd probably see at your grandma's house, and the new varieties that you guys are making are more like the shrub type roses.
Right. Yeah, because like when they were doing like a lot of breeding, because they were trying to get rid of like diseases, improved bloom times, different color flowers, better flowers, larger flowers. As they were doing a lot of the breeding, what they were finding is that they were losing a lot of the fragrance out of them. So a lot of your really like ornamental shrub roses don't really smell all that much.
Right.
So, what Proven Winners, definitely bred the scent back into At-Last. Because I mean, I did the same thing as Monica did. I've got it next to my, I got a whole hedge of At-Last roses next to the front porch on my girlfriend's house, and it smells amazing when you're just like sitting out there, enjoying like the nature or whatever, the neighborhood. I use them a lot in my landscape designs because of if you have them massed together, the scent will knock your socks off from about 50 yards away. It's an incredible rose.
Oh my word. And so, do you have any at the nursery, Cameron?
Maybe.
Maybe.
We sold a lot of those this spring, like a lot of those. And I'd have to go look and see if they got in production. I think I have a few left over, but man, they are not lasting very long. But Monica's right. They're like a re-blooming rose. I mean, they're blooming for me right now in the middle of summer.
Oh my word.
So yeah, they're great.
At last, is lasting.
Yeah. It's like one of the best bang for your buck roses I've ever seen, for sure. So, but the Oh So Easy series that Monica has over at Proven Winners. I mean, they're no slouches either. I mean, what were some of your favorite ones, Monica, out of your Oh So Easy line?
I love the double red. And so when you think of the Oh So Easy line, like you said, Cameron, it's more of like the landscape rose. And then, so it's not like your David Austin rose where you see that type of rose, but the double red is obviously called double red because it has two florets, you would say, in there. But it's the deepness of the red is, how can I say, like a Snow White's red lips, how they describe it. It is beautiful in the landscape. We love bringing it to trade shows because it's just it's the blooms on them. It makes a great hedge once again because of the size. It doesn't get too big. It stays within that 3 to 4 feet. Where if you think about, I just had to rip up a rose in my backyard or front yard, and it was just overgrown, and there was like 1 or 2 roses on it. Where this has the flowers all over it. That's probably my absolute favorite. I'm a sucker for roses. My mom loves them. I also love the hot paprika and paprika more because they're hardy. So they're hardy down to zone 3. So really, if something happens, Mother Nature gives you just a good old tough winter. They're hardy, and that's what I like. And in some of my states, they say it actually, because of the color on them, I'm not sure. This is just some of my customers say that it helps prevent Japanese beetles. So.
Oh, see, we're lucky. We don't have Japanese beetle here yet. Well, I guess they did trap one up in Ogden the other day.
I might have brought some. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, thanks.
I actually did. Yeah, Cameron, you're right. I actually did read that they found one up in, Ogden, and they're asking people, if you see this bug, please call immediately.
No, they always trap a couple here and there. They have over the last 20 years, but we've never had an infestation like they do back east. I've seen what Japanese beetles can do back east. It is a bug that we do not want to have here because they eat roses like you wouldn't believe. They just eat the blooms.
As soon as you said that, you both started shaking your heads no. And so I guess us in Utah, we're lucky not to have this bug in Utah.
Yeah, for sure. We are very lucky to not have them.
Okay, so if you guys see it, if you listeners, if you see a Japanese beetle, you got to call that number, and I'll put that in the episode notes just in case. Because we've got to work together to prevent this bug, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, it will destroy pretty much every single rose bloom. They eat linden trees like you would believe. They'll just completely take the leaves all the way up. And you know how many linden trees we have in Utah. So
there's tons of them down in Orem and Provo, right?
Yep. And if we get Japanese beetle, they're gone.
Oh boy. Okay. All right, well, when we come back right after this break, we're going to have more with Cameron Allcott from Progressive Plants and Monica Esh-Nauta from Proven Winners. Stay with us.
She's more than just gardening puns and sage advice. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT.
Harvest Gold Organics. Listen up, Gardening Utah listeners. We had Misty from Harvest Gold Organics on episode 16. You may or may not have heard it yet. If you haven't, definitely go on back and have a listen. Harvest Gold Organics has so many great benefits to the garden, and I'm so excited to tell you they've come up with a coupon code for our listeners because we've had so many requests. So go to harvestgoldorganics.com and use the code Utah for 20% off. Now, Harvest Gold Organics protects plants against heat stress, and if you miss a watering, no problem. Harvest Gold Organics is a super soil booster that keeps roots moist and plants hydrated, and it increases absorption of fertilizer and nutrients, so less is needed and less is wasted. Harvest Gold Organics provides smooth channels for the strongest root systems. Plants with Harvest Gold Organics are healthy, hydrated, and high yielding. It's certified through the USDA for organic use, safe for people, pets, and the environment. Again, go to harvestgoldorganics.com and use the code Utah for 20% off.
860 KKAT with more of the fastest growing show on radio. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and with me in studio today is Monica Esh-Nauta from Proven Winners and Cameron Allcott from Progressive Plants. Thanks so much for being here again, you guys.
We love it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier in the show that, Monica, you've come all the way from Grand Rapids, Michigan to do some classes at Progressive Plants. Now, as the listener, when you've heard this show, those classes will have already been over, but why don't you guys give us a scoop on what you guys are going to tell everybody in the next couple days?
Well, basically, we've been big Proven Winner fans for a couple of years, and I think a lot of people don't really know what out of the Proven Winners line they should plant. So we selected a lot of stuff that Spring Meadow Nursery, aka Proven Winners, has been growing over the years, and what we think is going to work the best in Utah. And we thought that with the COVID and everything like that kind of going on, that having some limited size classes outdoors, walking amongst the flowers and the shrubs and all that type of stuff would be kind of neat. And who better to get the information from than from the source itself, like flying out of Michigan, coming here and talking about some of the plants that are here. So she can give us all the dirty details of what we've selected, and we'll kind of talk about why we've selected these particular Proven Winner varieties for Utah, because of anybody who's trying to grow anything in Utah knows how difficult it is to try to do that. So and Monica's she's very, very smart. I've known her for 2 hours now, and I can tell already she's very smart.
I get a gold sticker. Thank you.
So, but yeah, one of the things that we're, that I really like, because Proven Winners has created a lot of the Hydrangea paniculata series, and that are very popular. A lot of people might know the Limelight variety. That is a Proven Winner. Little Lime, Quick Fire, and what are some other ones that you guys are growing, Monica?
For 2021, a sneak peek.
Oh yeah, if you're willing to give us a sneak peek, let's talk sneak peek. Let's do that.
Yes.
So as for a sneak peek for the hydrangeas for 2021, we'll have 3 new paniculatas this year, which I'm really excited for. And coming into this industry, I was like, oh, hydrangeas. And then I didn't realize the mass types of hydrangeas. And so this year, Tidbit, Firelight Tidbit, is one of 3 paniculatas that are coming out. And so if you think of Tidbit, it's going to be dwarf, kind of like Bobo, which Bobo is a very popular hydrangea of ours. I just planted some. But this one is going to have a really nice late season blooms with a creamy, light green, white flower, and then it'll turn into a nice raspberry pink. And so once again, it's going to stay dwarf. It's a zone 3. It's going to stay within that 2 to 3 feet tall and 3 feet wide, the same size as Bobo. That's really nice. So it's a full sun. Here it might be a little different. So obviously, when we talk about it, I'm speaking of it in Michigan, which was 55 degrees this morning, so completely different than Utah.
Wow.
Well, if it's a paniculata, we've had a lot of success with them in full sun out here. So is it just a cultivated version of the Firelight hydrangea, just like the regular Firelight? What's its history? Do you know?
I sell the plants, Cameron. I don't breed them. So Firelight is just obviously a great performer for us in general, and so we wanted to, as we see in the market, fields, people's yards are getting smaller, and so we want to keep working on those dwarf plants, and that's where this comes in play, because I'm pretty sure that the Firelight is going to be within your 6 to 8 feet, where this guy is very baby. So it's the 2 to 3 feet, which is nice.
See, and if that shorter firelight that you're talking about if it has the blooms like the size of like the regular firelight, I grew firelight for the first time last year, the big one, and I was blown away with how beautiful the flowers are on that thing. And as it fades, as the nights get cooler, like it instantly became my favorite hydrangea, like bar none. It was amazing.
If you liked those blooms, the second teaser would be your Quickfire Fab, because those blooms are going to be football size. And
what?
So I'm really excited about this one because once again, with
what?
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm so excited. So when you think about them, it's a football size shape, but on a 6 to 8 foot shrub. Looks, just massive. And so this is the Quickfire Fab. And so this will also start to have a nice green, luscious color and then turn into that like watermelon at the end of the season. And so I love this because it gives you a good season of interest, not just in the beginning of the bloom, but also towards the end. In Michigan, August, September time are perfect for paniculatas and the color. And so this one I'm so excited about. So when you talk about big blooms, Cameron, this is something you need.
Yeah, because I like out here, like the regular Quickfire and little Quickfire. They almost have more like of a lace cap type flower. They don't really open up the same way that say like Zinfandel or Firelight or like a Limelight does. It's just like more lace cappy, but it does bloom earlier than all of the other paniculatas. And the other thing that I've noticed with the Quickfire series, both the regular Quickfire and little Quickfire, is that they are probably the most vigorous growers out here in Utah. And they are no frills, no maintenance, no nothing out here. And they do fantastic. So if this other Quickfire, was it Quickfire Fab?
Yep, Quickfire Fab.
If that performs like the other Quickfires, I just might have to evaluate my new favorite hydrangea again.
Put it as your background.
Did you smuggle any in on the airplane? That's my question.
Yeah, exactly. So do you have any photos of these that we could share on social media to our Gardening Utah listeners?
Yep, and I can also tag our breeders, Tim Wood, he's one of our breeders, but he has a Facebook page and he posts all this too, which is really nice. Yeah, yep.
Oh my gosh.
All that.
Well, and Gardening Utah listeners, it sounds to me like Cameron Allcott at Progressive Plants is going to have to bring these in for us because we're starting the demand of this plant right this very second. And
I'm already excited.
I know.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but like, man, now I'm ready for 2020 to end just so I can grow this stuff for 2021.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm assuming you have a few more varieties that you can spill to us coming up for 2021. Am I right?
I have one more paniculata I can give you. So when you think of Limelight, which is, I would say, our top seller across the nation, we sell to 48 states and then to Canada. And it's just our number one. So of course it's us, it's Proven Winners, it's Spring Meadows. We like to challenge our competition in the industry, but we also like to challenge ourselves. And so this year we're coming out with Limelight Prime. And so we are improving on that one already. Of course, we're like, we set the gold standard. Now where can we get that? So this one is going to have a darker foliage. It's going to be even more green. It's going to actually be smaller. And so once again, we're going towards that industry of getting them smaller. And so it's going to have a really compact habit, upright growth, more blooms, if you can believe that. Yes, more blooms. And so we really want to see those stronger stems as well. And that's where this came into play. That's why we have now Limelight Prime, which is coming out.
Okay, so you called this Limelight Prime, and this is also the hydrangea, right?
Yep.
Okay, Cameron, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I'm excited. One of the main gripes that I think that people have with some of the paniculatas is that they have really big flower heads, and if they don't prune them correctly, especially at our climate, sometimes the heads will kind of cause the stems to like lay down. So anytime that any breeder's coming in with hydrangeas that have stronger stems, then they have, you get a better structure with the overall plant, overall less maintenance. It's a little bit more showy. And so I'm excited for it. I love, me at hydrangeas. We've talked about it over and over and over again. I think the first show that you had, that you had me on, I was like, hydrangeas are the greatest thing in the world.
Well, and it's true. And we actually posted a bunch of, I think it was your mom's yard, or was it her yard, or just your mom at the nursery?
It was my mom sitting in the middle of a whole bunch of hydrangeas that were in full bloom. And I think they were, I can't remember exactly which one that it was, but it was like one of the ones that have just ginormous flower heads.
Yeah. No, it was amazing.
Phantom. Maybe it was
It's
Phantom.
amazing. And listeners, you can find that at Gardening Utah on Instagram. You'll be able to scroll and see that photo and see what we're talking about. But why don't we quickly debunk, because one of the questions I kept getting if they missed the certain segment of that show was, but wait, hydrangeas are only for like Southern California and stuff like this. But we're talking about a slightly different variety, right?
Yes. Hydrangeas are a huge family. Huge family. So you've got mountain hydrangeas, panicle hydrangeas, mountain hydrangeas, and smooth hydrangeas. Okay, the ones that do pretty well in Utah are panicle hydrangeas do the best by far. Smooth hydrangeas do okay. And then you've got the mountain hydrangeas that we're just really kind of starting to really kind of mess with. I mean, Proven Winners has some really good ones with Tough Stuff and Tiny Tough Stuff. I fell in love with them immediately when I saw them. So I've got some that I'm trialing out at my girlfriend's house, actually, because she just has bare dirt, in certain spots in her yard. So I'm like, I'll just landscape it because I can. So she loves me. So that was really kind of interesting. And then the ones that we kind of struggle with here in Utah are the Hydrangea macrophyllus. Those are your big leaf hydrangeas. Usually they're sold in a lot of stores. They have like the big pom-pom type mop heads, I guess is what they're called a little bit. Yeah. And because they bloom off of old wood, in Utah, they typically desiccate and they die back to the ground, which is all new wood. And so you never really get a ton of blooms off of them. They'll survive, they'll do okay, but then they're mostly just kind of a green shrub. Yeah. So I know there have been some mop heads that have been developed to bloom off of new and old wood. So they look okay. I mean, I've tried a few out at a couple of landscape jobs, so they look all right. I mean, they just don't give you the showing like a panicle hydrangea would.
Yeah. So, interesting. So, Monica, tell us, we have 1 minute left of the show. So a couple things I want to hear from you. What is your absolute favorite Proven Winner shrub? And then let our listeners know exactly how they can decipher what Proven Winners is when they're looking at their favorite garden center, and how to pick out a Proven Winner plant.
So if I had to pick my favorite shrub, if you actually went on the Spring Meadow website, it says it was the double red rose. But as I've really learned more and more about all of our shrubs, and I planted 3 of them, I have fallen in love with our Pugster Amethyst. And so I always say they're a cute plant. They're so cute. So the blooms on them are massive compared to the foliage. And once again, it's a dwarf plant. I just planted 3. And I live on a corner, so there's a stop sign. And I planted 3 of them there so they can bloom right there. I don't have to keep replanting something. And the blooms are just phenomenal. I mean, seeing them in bloom around the nursery, they're bigger than my hand. I'm 5'8" and have a 6-foot wingspan, and you're on the Zoom call, you could kind of try to get a picture, but they're massive. I mean, I can't get my hand around them. It's crazy. I love them so much. And they're cute.
So I'll put that in the episode notes, everyone. So that's called a Pugster Amethyst. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. Perfect.
And whenever you're in a garden center, your local garden centers, you'll know a Proven Winner by their white container, and it says Proven Winner.
White container that says Proven Winners on it. Well, you heard it here, Gardening Utah listeners. Monica and Cameron, thanks so much for being here. This has been a riot. Good luck this weekend at the nursery tour, and I hope to have you both back sometime soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you for having me.
That's been so much fun. Thank you so much, guys.
When you're ready to grow big or go home, make your neighbors green with envy. Get the Gardening in Utah podcast, Gardening Utah, available wherever you get your podcasts and at 860kkat.com/garden.